I just wanted to remind you, many of you may know, but Tracey Hallam, fantastic badminton athlete, singles player, wonderful to watch, interesting, really beautiful style. And Tracey had played badminton and certainly was a top-notch international player from England. And I think it's unique, but just as luck would have it, I had the opportunity to watch her win gold in both Melbourne in 2006, and then in Beijing, let me think about the 2006, and then again in Beijing, a very exciting match reaching the quarterfinals. And they were both first class and something I can remember like it was yesterday. So wonderful to celebrate and have Tracey here today. And Tracey's work has taken her to coaching in Australia and New Zealand, Australia, and back to New Zealand. And so just great to have her here today and great to have you at the tournament and see you on the back and the side of the field of play with Team New Zealand. So Tracey's work, we have talked about her performance as an international player, but she also has a strong background in the grassroots as well as high performance. And just delighted, as introductions go, to add you to our morning and add you to our panel today. So we're going to come after you first, okay? The first question for you. And just, we'll start, I would like to ask, just by starting, you have been one of the best ladies singles players in the world. You had your time and your continued work as an athlete. Wondering how those Commonwealth Games, those Olympic Games, how you performed and how you dealt with the pressure of these major tournaments and desire to be successful, how you really managed that and how that's impacted your role as a coach.
Well, I think it's been really important that I knew as a player that I'd done everything that I could to be and perform the best that I could. And when you have that, you go onto the court with an immense amount of confidence. Of course, your opposition is always going to put you off and try and throw curveballs at you. And it's up to you to try and deal with that, as well as your coach as well behind the court. I think one of the biggest pressure situations that I had was going into the final of the Commonwealth Games of the team event in 2006. As I saw it, the English team, we were playing against Malaysia, and as I saw it, England had 2 matches, Malaysia had 2 matches, and I guess my match was undecided. So I felt that was quite a huge amount of pressure. Obviously, before the match, you're extremely nervous, but you do everything you can in your preparation to try and rid some of the nerves. Obviously, you get onto the court. Again, it's important that you're quite energetic in the warm-up, like as the match starts. But then after a few points, kind of it all calms down a little bit. I played that particular match and I ended up losing, which meant that England only got the silver medal. I was up against Wong Mi Chu. Obviously, extremely good player, very difficult to deal with. As I remember, I think the third set went to around about 28-26, and it could have gone either way. For Malaysia, it's good that they got to win that match. She played very well. I felt extremely distraught at the end of that match. I remember having photos afterwards, and I just couldn't contain how disappointed I was and how I felt for the rest of the English team members. So that was a tough situation. But I guess every situation is different. It's important that you just try and stay calm in those situations as much as you can, and try and deal with the situation calmly.
So you take that and you take the conversation a little bit earlier this morning about empathy, and now you are coaching, and also coaching, as you know, in very high stakes matches, regardless of athletes being 12 years old or much older. How's that transition been for you, and has it guided you, these experiences? How has it guided you?
Yeah, I think it guides you and it helps you. I think I can pass on a lot to the athletes by the experiences that I've had. I I remember having one of our English coaches at the Commonwealth Games in 1998. That I think it was actually one of the players that came off the court. We were playing against India, and they said, "Just do what you can." And I think my mind went into overdrive then, and I probably panicked. And I think we lost that match, but with all the matches in the group play, it actually meant that England did win that gold medal. That was when it was ladies and men's. So it's just some people and some experienced coaches kind of indicate to you that it's a pressure situation. I remember Rexy Manaki said that to me in Manchester Commonwealth Games. Just kind of relax. And at that point, I really understood then not to panic. So it was really helpful to have coaches with that experience that he has, and various other coaches that I've worked with, to kind of indicate to you the situation, but also you take that in and it just calms you down. You've got to kind of keep calm.
Thank you very much for that. If I look at this maybe with Scott and your transition from playing to coaching, and sort of that era, I'm thinking about those, the last 10 or 15 years, and you look back, what is your sort of most guiding principles for you in that transition from athlete to coach? And you've talked about some pretty significant accomplishments, but what has, if you reflect and look back, what is your most significant reflection and learning in that transition?
Yeah, for me, I think it's really around trying to understand where I want to go, and whether that was on the playing field or off of it, and whether that's been, the first match that I ever played or today. I think it's really critical in trying to understand the real end goal of where I want to be, and building some steps along the way to get there. So for my transition out of sport full time was fraught with challenges because I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. That was the hardest piece, I think, and I think this is common for so many athletes, and having that very clear, easily defined goal of being the best that you can possibly be at your sport to now what, right? What do I do now? Where do I go now? How do I be the best at this next thing? What is this next thing? I've only known being the best in my community or my country at this thing, and now I'm one of many. So that adjustment of that I guess it's humbling in a way, where you are used to being maybe treated in a certain way or given some extra opportunities because of who you are, what you can do on the playing field, and then you enter this whole new world of, well, I'm just, I'm putting in applications to work at places, and I'm 10 years older than somebody else, and I have less work experience or less potentially relevant experience to that position. It was really challenging. So, if I could go back and do it again, I think what I would do is try to prepare myself a little bit better in recognizing that transition will come at some point, starting to do some things that could prepare me to be a little bit more goal-oriented after sport as well as in sport. And I think that would have made it a really big, or really helped me a lot in terms of, making that transition a little bit smoother, because we're all, as athletes, coaches, anything revolving around sport, you're competitive and you're always trying to be the best that you can be. So that doesn't change. What changes is what your goals are and the directions that you're going. So knowing what that next direction is will help a lot, I think.
Thank you for that. And that post-life, that transition piece is so critical and so important. Ken Larsen, question for you. And you have been in this game a long time. A long time. When you look at the advancements of the game, innovation, the impact of innovation, the Danish hub system, all of these pieces. I'm wondering a couple of pieces about you. And one might be, how do you stay fresh? How do you stay fresh in the game, that you are inspiring yourself and continue to bring that inspiration to and from others?
I think actually that's a really good question.
And you don't have to look at me. So
No. But I'm
Yeah.
just rewarding you for really good questions. Thanks. No, it is a really good question, because one of the statements that we often hear inside the world of sports, primarily inside the world of sports, that if you have been a coach in a club for 5 or 6 years, then maybe the club need a new perspective of things and all that. And then they change the coaches, and maybe you change yourself as a coach, because, the way of talking about you as a coach and how long you can be there is like this. Actually, what for me is important is that when I do what I do, because I think that it's really, really fun. What drives me, and I'm a teacher also at the university, and I'm a coach also, what really drives me and what is my main motivation is when I can see that the way I work with people, players, students, whatever, actually makes a difference. If I can see that they experience the activity in badminton is the most fun thing in the world. And the second thing, if I can see that I can help developing people that actually, as I also said in my speech up here, are able to make choices, are able to cope for themselves, are independent and all that, then, and this sounds a little bit like just a phrase, but it's not. That's a reward for me, actually. And I think that's why I've been able to do what I have been doing for so much time. And I didn't mention it when I was doing my speech up here, but I'm actually also, in the board of directors for Badminton Denmark. I'm the responsible for all the elite and talent work in Denmark. And I'm in the board of directors for what we call Team Denmark. It's the organization who actually support economy to all our Olympic sports. And the reason why I've gone into this kind of work the last 5 years is that when you're in a positions like this, you can actually make a difference. You can make a difference that actually can help people, first of all, become happier, but also get better results. And what I'm trying to do in Denmark, in badminton and in all sports, is say, okay, of course we know we want to win. We want to win. But if we should put ourselves in a position where we can win, actually, probably we have to enjoy what we're doing and become better. That sounds a little bit naive, I know that, but it's really a difficult exercise to turn around this perspective where our main priority is not to win. Every idiot can make the fact that we want to win. We all do. It's much more fun to win than to lose. But that's not, for me, the most interesting thing. That is just a side effect from the two other things. This is the most fun thing in the world. Yeah.
Thank you. Very, very helpful. Thank you for that. Just in thinking about a couple of your answers, I'm going to ask Wade. You shared a great deal of information with us this morning. We've had some sessions on court with coaches, and I think it's no secret in the room that different parts of the world and different countries sort of focus on different things. In their almost coaching takes a personality that might look different in Asia. It might look different in Oceania. It might look different in North America. Some folks may really say footwork. Somebody else may really focus on something else. And so my question for you, Wade, when we're looking at trying to be better as coaches each and every day and year, is how can we take these unique styles and unique focus across the world and collaborate better to share our thinking, and so we can really push that innovation button, absolutely competing, but how do we push together and collaborate better?
Yeah, I always come back to this idea of principles over practices. So it's interesting to see what New Zealand does, or Singapore, or Japan, but it's never about replication. So I don't need to do what Japan does. I need to understand. I'm very curious what they do there, but they have their way, and it works for them. That's great. But what I want to do when we get together across environments is look at explaining why we do what we do and why we do it this way. And so then we start to get at the principles. Oh, so it's really not about how you run a warm-up, but you have to have a warm-up. Okay, and this is how we do our warm-up, and this is how we do our warm-up, and this is how the rituals and routines we use. So it's not the actual ritual or the routine, it's have a ritual or a routine that is genuine, and it has to be meaningful for you and your environment. And we actually did a study a few years back where we wanted to see if there was kind of a common style of great coaching, just as an example. And we looked at the best coaches in different sports who had taken athletes to multiple professional and world and Olympic championships. And they were all different. So we did this big study and looking for the answer, and the answer was they're all different. But the one thing they held in common, every single one of them, was they were genuine. They were true to themselves. I'm not trying to be like Japan or Singapore. I'm going to be like Denmark. What works? What's our identity? What resonates with who we are as a people? And I always kind of go back to in rugby, the New Zealand All Blacks, and they're playing against Ireland in a few weeks in Dublin, and New Zealand's number 1 and Ireland's number 2, and everyone wants to learn from whoever's number 1. So we study that group up there, but it's never about replicating what they do. It's about understanding the principles of what they do and why they do that, and let's create our own best practices that are genuine to who we are and our style and our culture.
Thank you very much. Last question I'm going to ask at this moment, so I'm just going to do one more and prime you for the questions from the floor in just a moment. So Tracey, looking at coaching, looking at what coaching is as a career and profession, we do have less women in coaching than we do men. That's no secret. And we're trying to improve that in different levels of leadership on and off the field of play around the world. So my question to you is what advice you might give to those, and it's for men and women, of course, for women who are trying to, do their best job as coaching, take it to the next level, but particularly around the room that might be working in a fairly isolated community. I think of the tree that Wade showed. When we talk about coaching being lonely, it can be quite lonely in some countries of the world when you also don't have that immediate network. So I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
I think it's, as a female, I do find it quite intimidating, like working with male coaches, just in the fact that, for myself anyway, like I probably doubt myself a little bit. And I guess my advice to other females is kind of try and make your point known, but also advice to the males, kind of just really have a chat to the females within your team, especially like the coach on the coaching side, just to kind of have a kind of dialogue as to how they're feeling. I think that would really help.
Thank you for that. So, questions from the floor. We do have microphones running around, I do believe. Thank you, Kathy. I think Wayne has a question over here to start. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, great presentations this morning. Congratulations. My question is for Ken, and I'd certainly like to hear the opinions of the rest of the panel as well on this. But we spoke during the break about the difference between a good player and an elite player. Is the adaptability of the player being able to change based on the situation, or as you call it, disturbance? Do you feel this is a trait that can be taught, or is either you have it or you don't? And if you can teach it, is that the most difficult thing to teach?
For sure, I think it can be taught or it can be learned, because I think that I'm quite sure that part of our nature is that we actually are reflecting on things when things are not going the way we want them to go. And actually, I think that one of my points this morning also when I was up here is that I think maybe the main job for the coach is to facilitate that ability to reflect. And that means that you have to communicate in a certain way with the players, the things I said in the morning here. And I agree totally, or we agreed out there when we talked about this, that when you look at badminton players anyway, and probably it's the same in all other sports, but what separates the really highest level of players to the players below them, it's not technical stuff. the 2,000 best men's singles players in the world probably can do have a similar technique. They can do the same strokes, no problem. They probably, or we know that on the physical side, they're equal. From test, we know that. So it's not technical, it's not physical. So there are only one or two things left, depending if you combine tactical with the mental stuff. And this is the way, as you said, what separates probably is the ability to adapt to a situation where they have to adapt really quickly. American scientist called Donald Schoen calls it reflection in action. You have to be able, when things are not going the way you want in a situation, in the rally, you have to be able to adapt. And I think that's what separates elite players from top elite players from the rest. I have a practice every week, every Wednesday in Denmark with 6 players in my club. One of them is a guy I mentioned who was playing here. And we are not playing matches or physical or technical or footwork or anything. We are playing for 2 hours, small games where we develop awareness, where we develop tactical skills, where situations shift, courts shift, everything shift, and they have to adapt to the things the whole time. So I totally agree. That's what separates, really.
Thank you, Wayne. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, Wade?
Did you say Wade?
Go ahead. Yes, I did. Welcome you.
I'll just add something really quick. I agree, but to me what underlies that is trust. You have to be fearless. Like, you can't be second-guessing yourself, especially in a match, a high-paced environment. You have to trust your training, and that allows you to make quick decisions and adapt and create. So kind of underneath that, I see, trust. Do I trust my preparation? Do I trust my coaches? Do I kind of get out of the way and allow myself to do what I feel I should be doing right now? And we were in Las Vegas last week with different high-performing groups, and there was one of the sessions was on training vulnerability and creativity. And a lot of the world's best teams are starting to kind of tap into this, where they'll have creativity sessions, and you have to do things that get you uncomfortable and really, kind of make a fool of yourself. And there's lots of improvisation, and what that does is it kind of removes a little bit of, or opens up that filter between the conscious and the subconscious. So all this training that we're doing is kind of being integrated into the subconscious. And think about Nike. Their motto is just do it. And really what we want our athletes to be able to do in those high performance situations is just do it. But that requires trust. So the more I think about it, I see the importance of creativity training and vulnerability training, so you can trust your instinct, trust your training.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything to that, Tracey or Scott?
I totally agree. I think one thing that I need to get through to my players, and I guess it happens in different places around the world, is that they need to be brave and take that chance. I think, like, it can be a 50-50 match, but if they're not just going to take the chance when it pops up, then it's going to be very difficult for them to ultimately win.
Thank you. Just before I go to you, Scott, Ken is going to just...
Just really briefly, of course, I agree totally with all that. But if you are going to be brave, or if you have the ability to be brave, you of course have to be in situations in practice where you have to make choices of your own. Because every time you make a choice, you have the risk of choosing the wrong thing, and that's a risk you have to be able to bear. Actually, that's not only in badminton and sports; that's in general in our society nowadays. If we are not taking choices, then we never learn to bear the risk, actually. Yeah? That's why I said what I did this morning, that do what you are told. That's probably in the past.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, the only piece that I'll add is around the confidence of athletes in being able to believe in themselves to take those risks and take those opportunities, and yes, training that, right? So training that failure is okay. And actually, failure is what you want, right? The more that you fail, the more that you learn, right? How many of us have had an athlete win a match and then or win a tournament and you're out celebrating or whatever, and then you don't look back, you don't reflect as much on that match as you do when you lose that match, right? It's natural. It's natural. So the more that we can set up opportunities to fail, the more that we can learn. And it's about reflecting on that failure, pushing yourself to your limits so that you can see where that edge is and just move it an inch further.
Thank you. Question? Sir.
I have a question for Mr. Gilbert. Most of the examples in your presentation were concerning or regarding the team games, like hockey, rugby, and so many other, football, and so many. Whereas badminton is predominantly an individual sport. So how do you modify your coaching methods, or rather change them from teaching a team or coaching a team and then an individual sportsman?
Yeah, that's a good observation. But I've also, like golf, tennis, worked swimming, a lot of different individual sports. And what I've seen is that the foundation is understanding and connecting with people. So whether it's one person or 10 people or 100 people, it's connecting with people. And that pyramid that I put up in the slide, the bottom row, great coaching starts with connecting with people. You're coaching people who happen to play badminton. Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Part B?
I have a sub-question.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're coaching a group of players who are going to compete against each other. At that time, how do you modify your coaching methods?
So in one club, for example, you have athletes who are competing for positions and are going to be competing against each other. I see that as somewhat of an advantage in a sense, because we want them to be competitive. Good practices are competitive. You are competing.
Our role as a coach.
Your role as a coach? I think to win. No, I'm just kidding. I see coaches more and more as kind of engineers or architects. So you create environments for people to learn, for people to perform, for people to connect. So regardless of the sport or the context, I always push coaches to think of why. Sorry, why do you design your environment? Why is your team meeting designed that way? Why is your practice designed that way? Why is your warm-up designed that way? So it's almost like it's an engineering problem. When I look at what do I want my athletes to feel, to learn, to be able to do, I should first start with the blueprint. What is the design of this environment that will nurture, foster those types of behaviors? So honestly, it doesn't matter what the sport is.
Can I jump in on that as well?
Please.
I mean, I come from a team sport as well, but for me, it's very much the same. And you're always going to have athletes who are on the edge, right? They're competing with one another to make that last spot, and they're in your team. And it's about the messaging to the athlete that's really, really critical. It's that you want them to put everything that they have on there, in the game, in the training, so that they have no regrets to look back on, right? It's very easy to try to take shortcuts and think that, oh, I'm better than this person, or I'm this much better at this, so I think I'm going to make it. And you can create these amazing team environments for competition within a group if everyone is pushing to their max all the time. And if you can do that, then you'll have the best players possible. And they may not go on to win, or they may, but really, I think our jobs as coaches are to try to get the best out of our athletes, and the way that we can get the best out of them is by encouraging them and telling them to continue to do that, right? No matter what the situation is, whether they're playing against their best friend who they're training against, or they're competing against someone that they don't know. To me, your approach should be the same in trying to get the most out of it as possible.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes, sir?
First.
What?
He was there first.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, my question is to Tracey. Tracey, since you are in Australia now, Australia has done a lot of research on sports.
She's in New Zealand at this moment.
Sorry,
Yeah.
New Zealand. But Australia and New Zealand probably has done a lot of research on sport. Do you find that they have found something new that has profoundly changed, or is there an aha moment? Had I had this, I would have been better.
I'm not exactly sure on that, sorry.
Okay, it's-
Has there any new research come that would have made your game better or your performance better, that had you put it into practice from new research, that it would have changed your game?
Yeah, I'm sure it would have done, no doubt. Obviously, things are moving forwards all the time, and like specialists are finding better ways to do things all of the time. So no doubt, it would, but obviously we'll never know.
One last question, which is probably to the whole panel. Badminton is played in a lot of countries, and a lot of people are playing, probably in the top 10 in the world in terms of a sport. But I find maybe badminton happens in spite of organizations, I would say. And I have been in organizations. It doesn't seem to be supporting the grassroots that well. In the grassroots level, organized badminton doesn't seem to work for whatever reason. Most of the organizations are in 10% of players, pretty much, catering to 10%. If you look at the nationals, internationals, it's catering to the top 10%, not to the rest of the sport. Do you see anything changing?
Who would like to take that? Because I know it's a goal. It's a goal right now of so many, right? To be able to increase that base and to increase the grassroots. And different countries are going about it different ways. And of course, the BWF has taken it on as a challenge.
Yeah, but just to follow what you say, I'm not sure. I don't know which countries are focusing which percentage of their attention to what. If we should talk in general about this, of course, the main goal for the Danish Badminton Association, and the most important goal is that we are so many as possible in our common organization. That's our goal. And then we'll see who will become elite players and who will become lifelong part-time players or whatever. I think our philosophy is that we can't do this without each other. And again, it seems a little bit like a phrase up here, but for us it's not actually. So in our organization, a player in a little town out there who plays one time in a week is equally as important for us as Victor Axelsen is. And that's not just a statement. That's really based on the values we have in our organization here. So, but again, each organization do it in different ways and hopefully based on different values. We had a discussion we talked about it yesterday actually. A lot of organizations are talking a lot about, we have to get funding and we have to get more money and we have to get this and that. But rarely, in my opinion, very few organizations, when they talk about this, talk about the contents. What will they actually use the money for? And I'm really happy that Wade have said sometimes now, why? For me, that's the most important question at all. If we cannot answer the why are we doing this question, don't do it. That's a waste of money and a waste of time, actually. I tell my students normally and my coaches when I educate coaches that just imagine some idiot will come and ask you, why are you doing this? And that idiot could be me, actually. And if you can't answer that question, you are just a laughingstock, actually.
Thank you. Any other questions? Did you have a question? No? Okay. Go ahead. I think over here, Kathy, maybe? Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Been told to introduce myself. So I'm Stuart. I'm the Australian junior coach. This question is probably most relevant for Scott, but I think with people that have played badminton to a high level as well and transitioned out of sport, it's probably relevant for you guys as well. So you talked about earlier how when badminton players, but also any athletes from other sports finish playing, the transition out of sport, and you said how finding what basically fills up the rest of your life is a difficult decision. I think I agree with that, but I think that at the age of 21, 22, when most other people in the Western world graduate from university, they have to make the same choice. So not knowing what to do with your life is quite a normal thing these days. But what I feel is a problem for athletes is trying to replace almost the ecstasy of sport. It's a really unique environment and something that not many people get to experience. So when a lot of us finish playing, nothing quite makes up for that. Basically the competition that we have, and you see that in particularly a lot of famous people, they replace sport with drugs and alcohol, and they haven't really known what normal life is like. So I'm just interested to hear your comments on that and some coping strategies for players.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the question. So I think, I guess I agree with you in terms of, not knowing what you want to do with yourself is a very natural evolution in life, and not everyone knows every step along the way what they want to do or what they want to be. I would say what's a bit unique to the athletics situation is that it tends to happen, if you're a full-time athlete, it happens later on in life. So most of your peers outside of sport have already kind of found their way, and so you don't have that opportunity to have that back and forth discussion, that exploration with people who are in the same situation as you often. So I think it is slightly different in that regard. And then in terms of coping, I think it's like any other situation, really. You want to talk about it, talk to those who have been through it before is extremely helpful. So there was one bullet on one of my slides that was talking about sporting mentors. So if there's people who have been through what you're going through ahead of you that you can talk to, so a senior team athlete when you're on the junior team, a retired athlete when you're a senior athlete, someone who's in that next stage of their athletic career or of their life can be a great resource for you to be able to bounce ideas off of, to kind of show the ropes to you in a way. And then in terms of that high or that real amazing feeling that you get from sport, it's difficult to replicate. It ultimately is, and that's why we keep going back to sport time and time again, and because it's amazing. It's like no other thing that's out there. So I'm not going to sit up here and tell you, oh yeah, it's just the same. Go off to work and answer your emails, and you'll get that amazing feeling, because chances are you're probably not. But if you do find something that you're passionate about and that you can be excited by, then you still have that opportunity to push yourself and to learn, and that's something that's also really exciting.
Just thank you very much. And just to help out, if you're looking online, or you Google, our National Olympic Committee in Canada, so it's olympic.ca, our Canadian Olympic Committee, has something called Game Plan. And it would be interesting to invite you to have a look at it, because what they've done as a National Olympic Committee working with all the sports, they said, how do we do this? How do we help our athletes through their athlete pathway, and coaches through their athlete pathway from, as they're starting to be identified as high performance athletes, and they have their pivotal Olympic, Paralympic, Commonwealth, Pan Am Game experience, World Championship, and then they're transitioning outside of sport. And so this game plan is divided into 4 quadrants, and one is careers. One is health and emotional health, one is support. And so if you want to have a peek at it, it is something that might be worthwhile having a look at when you have a free moment. Any other questions? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anthony from Quebec, Sherbrooke. We had a discussion about that during the break. My question is more for Kenneth. Could you please come back on your take on technical repetition versus the objectives you want to set out? And the second question is more about when you do more open training sessions, tactical situations, what is the kind of feedback you tend to give to the athletes?
The first question, I'm not quite sure I understood. If you want me to repeat something about the technical things or what?
Well, just to come back on your take about repetition training,
yeah,
and the objectives you set out.
Yeah, I think the main conclusion was that pure repetition, based on the premise that situations are the same every time, is just a no-go. It can't. That won't happen in the real world, actually. So the topic, if normally we say when we teach or we train, we have to have a goal, we have to have a topic that we focus on, and if that topic is a backhand spin shot, as example, that's okay for me, that's good. But we just have to realize that topic comes in many different variations. It's not a single topic then. So we have to be good coaches to know all the variations, and we have to be able to also, of course, at the moment the player making a choice, to talk with them about it and everything. So pure repetition based on the assumption that we can reproduce situations, for me, that's a catastrophe, really. The second question, and I think that's really interesting, the feedback when you do. You call it open practice, but exercises that are about tactical issues or mental issues. If I should be true to myself when I say that I want to help people develop independence, reflective skills, self-esteem, then I have to communicate and give feedback in a certain way, and we talked about it a lot, some of us today. That is, of course, about trying to implement a dialogue based on questions, where they actually come up with answers and everything themselves. This dialogue you can do in practice, of course, and that will help them actually develop reflexive skills. When you are doing, people often ask me, when you do coaching in a match, or when you sit behind the court and do coaching between rallies, when do you do it? How do you do it then? Of course, time is a factor here. And sometimes you have to choose this behavioristic, do what you are told, or instruction approach. And one of the situations is connected to limited time. Another parameter who could justify, in my mind, the use of this behavioristic instruction is if it's a matter of security. We don't want to discuss if my students at the university do shot puts. Sorry, I don't want to discuss if they have to wait until the track is free. I just tell them don't throw the shot, the ball, if there's somebody out there. But in a practice situation, if I'm true to my beliefs about how to develop people, I have to interact in a dialogue, and I do that. And I have practiced small children also, from 6 years up, and they can actually handle this situation and actually interact in some way in this discussion. Actually, yeah. But it's much more easy to tell them what to do, because then you are not vulnerable yourself as a coach.
Just add one quick comment, because I was adding some notes while you're speaking about that. I think we have to be careful with dichotomies. It's this or that. It's all of that. And there is a lot of value in repetition. Yeah. And maybe not from a technical standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint, because they have to feel like they're ready to perform or to make good decisions. So sometimes having them repeat something over and over and over again, very behavioristic or directed, it's not so much developing refinement skills or decision-making skills, but it's developing a feeling. And I feel good about myself and my ability to do these things and make good decisions.
But it all depends if you can reproduce a situation that the repetition is implemented in. I understand what you mean, but with technical stuff, it's difficult if you define repetition as I have tried to do here. Yeah? But it's really important to say that we use different approaches according to the situation. Of course we do.
Thank you for that. Let's see if we can go back and forth on that one. Last question. We'll take one more question over here. Would be great. Here we are.
Hi, I'm Cristina from Peru. My question is more about relationships between players and coaches. So in Peru, maybe that happens more in America, where manners are kind of different than Canada or maybe Europe. How important do you feel is like you being liked by your players? Because I've seen a lot of coaches that work with me that put a lot of effort in being liked by the players, and they feel that this is the way to be a good coach. The question is, how much important do you think is that all players like you as a person? Should they go with your personality, or you should adapt to their personality?
I'll just jump in real quick and they can go. It comes up a lot. Your job is not to be making friends as a coach. And a lot of great coaches have told me, look, I don't need any more 12-year-old friends, okay? My job is to teach, develop, and build. And I'm going to make you do hard things. And a lot of times, you're not going to like it. And when we discipline people, they don't like that. When we make them do hard things, they don't like that. And most of the great coaches that have been around, a lot of their players will tell you that when they were playing for those coaches, they did not like them. In fact, they often hated them. Later in life, say, wow, they love them. And ask any kid if they like their mom or dad all the time. Of course they don't, right? Because we make them do hard things. And so it's really, but it's human nature to want to be liked. I want to be accepted. We want to have acceptance. But so that's a tension I see with a lot of coaches. But ultimately, in that pyramid I showed earlier today, the cornerstone is love. So great coaching starts with love. But the way love is defined, our definition is acting in the best interest of your athletes. And sometimes they need a pat on the back, and sometimes they need one of these, right? So, and they're not going to like that. So it's not about like.
So I'm just going to ask Kenneth, you can respond to that?
Yeah, just following up on that. If it depends a little bit, I think, which approach you have to the relation with the player here. If you have the relation that I'm talking about, where you actually interact with them, probably it's not a matter of becoming friends or want to become friends with them, but the relation will have a special character then. You actually can relate to each other. And for me, that's really important, really, really important, that actually I can talk with them, they can be critical against me, and this process is based on respect, mutual respect. That's for me, that's one of the biggest success criteria when I work with people here.
Thank you, and thank you. Did you want to say something, Scott?
Just really quickly, respect is what stands for me. I need to have respect for my athletes. My athletes need to respect me. But I don't need to be liked, and they don't need to like me. But when we are going to achieve something together, we set out what the goal is. We respect the process that we're going to get there and how we're going to get there. But yeah, friends is not important.
Thank you. Really, really appreciate that. I do wonder, too, we're out of time, but we do have on our stage 4 very successful people. And I would say that the question to think about, and we don't have time for this, is how we define success. We've heard today, the broadness of it and what it means, and what these folks would think their most successful qualities are. I think in the room we can probably make some conclusions on that, but that is a continued dialogue and discussion that I encourage you to have. I'd like to thank Tracey and Wade and Scott and Kenneth for being our panel today. They are here. They're not running. They're not running away. So some of these conversations may continue in a smaller environment. I also do wonder our structures. We have structure and function. Our structures in badminton, we have coaches at the back of the court. We have coaches and managers, whatever, sitting very close to players. Does that fit the model that we have with coaches or with athletes needing to make their own decisions and make their own adjustments on the field of play? Some people have talked about that this morning, that debate about should our coaches be there? And absolutely, that's the paradigm we live in right now. But it'll be interesting to see how our beliefs and values can influence some of the structures, right or wrong, over time. So thank you, the 4 of you. We're going to finish up and move on to our next presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.